My girlfriend postponed our weekend plans for her friend. He called me heartless and controlling of her personal life. I set boundaries. I'm 28, and I've been dating Megan, who's 26, for just over a year. At first, everything was amazing. Megan and I had this connection that just clicked. But there's something, or rather, someone that's getting in the way. Her best friend, Alex. Alex is the kind of friend who, from what I can tell, seems to be more like Megan's other half. They're practically inseparable. When we started dating, I thought Alex was a typical best friend, popping in and out of Megan's life like most friends do. But soon, I realized they shared a bond that I couldn't even begin to touch. No matter what we did, Alex always seemed to have a say or a role in it. At first, I brushed it off. Best friends have each other's backs, right? But this was different. Whenever we'd plan something, Alex would somehow end up tagging along, as if they had an unspoken agreement that everything in Megan's life was theirs to share. I started to feel like the third wheel in my own relationship. Here's an example. Megan and I decided to go hiking one weekend. It was something we'd been talking about for weeks. I was excited, thinking it'd be a great chance for us to spend time together, just the two of us. But then, the night before, Megan casually mentions that Alex would be joining us. Just like that. No discussion, no warning. I'd planned this trip, made all the arrangements, and suddenly Alex was coming along as if they'd always been part of the plan. During the hike, it was even worse. Megan and Alex walked ahead, chatting away, laughing at inside jokes I didn't understand, and sharing stories that predated my time with Megan. It was like I was tagging along on their trip, not the other way around. I tried to get involved, to steer the conversation towards something I could contribute to, but they quickly drift back into their own world. I tried talking to Megan about it afterward. I told her that it felt like Alex was invading our space, that I wanted time alone with her to build our relationship without a third person constantly in the mix. Megan brushed it off, saying, "Alex is just close to me, that's all. It's not a big deal." But it felt like a big deal. There were moments I wondered if they were somehow more than friends. I pushed that thought away, telling myself that Megan loved me, that I was being paranoid. But the more time I spent around them, the harder it became to ignore the possibility. Then came our first anniversary. I had it all planned. A romantic dinner, just the two of us, at a quiet little restaurant that I'd picked out specifically because I knew Megan would love it. I'd made a reservation weeks in advance and was counting down the days. The night finally arrived. I got to the restaurant early, wanting everything to be perfect. But when Megan walked in, she wasn't alone. Alex was right there with her, acting like they were part of the evening from the beginning. I was stunned. Megan didn't seem to think there was anything strange about it. She hugged me, introduced Alex to the waiter like this was the most natural thing in the world, and they both sat down. I felt trapped, staring at the candlelit table I'd set up for a romantic evening and realizing it was now anything but. I tried to make the best of it. I didn't want to ruin the night, so I played along, but I was fuming inside. The whole time, Megan and Alex seemed completely oblivious to how awkward this was for me. They were laughing, sharing stories, and acting like I was barely there. Later that night, after we left the restaurant, I couldn't hold it in any longer. I told Megan that I was disappointed, that I felt like our relationship was turning into some kind of weird trio, and that it was making me feel insignificant. Megan looked at me, genuinely surprised. "Alex is just part of my life, like family," she said, as if that explained everything. Then came the kicker. Megan suggested we all go on a weekend trip together. A fun getaway for all three of us. I was stunned. She had no idea how this was making me feel, or maybe she didn't care. Either way, it was clear that Alex wasn't going anywhere. Against my better judgment, I agreed to the trip. I wanted to believe that maybe this was all in my head, that I could win Megan over without competing with Alex. But the trip turned out to be another nightmare. The entire time, I felt like a spectator to their lives. Megan and Alex acted like a couple, from planning our activities to picking where we ate. When I tried to suggest something, they either ignored me or brushed it off with a polite "maybe next time." They'd take selfies, just the two of them, and post them online with captions like, "Besties forever." I'd be lucky if I made it into the background of a single photo. One night, after a long day, we sat around a campfire. I tried to bring up how isolated I felt, but Megan shut me down. She told me I was overthinking it and that I should just relax and enjoy the moment. Alex sat there, watching us with this smug smile, as if they knew exactly what they were doing. At that point, I started to wonder if Alex was doing this on purpose, intentionally keeping me on the sidelines. The worst part? I could feel myself starting to resent Megan. I loved her, or at least I thought I did. But this constant intrusion was making it impossible to have a normal relationship. And she didn't seem to care, as long as Alex was happy. When we got back from the trip, I gave myself some space. I needed time to think, to figure out if this was something I could handle long term. Megan called, asking why I was being distant. I told her, for what felt like the 100th time, that her relationship with Alex was making it impossible for us to have a real relationship. And for the first time, she seemed to take it seriously. She promised me that she'd set some boundaries, that she wanted us to work. For a few weeks, things were better. Megan spent more time with me, alone. We went on dates, just the two of us, and it felt like we were finally building something together. But I knew it wouldn't last. Alex was always in the background, sending texts, calling, finding reasons to pop by, and Megan couldn't say no. The last straw came on a random Tuesday night. I was at Megan's apartment, and we were having a quiet night in, watching a movie. Out of nowhere, Alex showed up at the door, claiming they'd had a bad day and needed to talk. Megan let them in without hesitation, and just like that, my evening with her was over. They talked, laughed, and acted like I wasn't even there. I left that night, feeling more defeated than ever. I don't know what's going to happen between us, but I can't keep being the third wheel in my own relationship. Part of me wonders if I'm crazy for putting up with this for so long. But another part of me is still holding on to the hope that Megan will see what this is doing to us. Maybe I just need to let go, but it's hard when you're in love, even when that love is tearing you apart. After the trip, I hoped things would improve. Megan had promised to set boundaries with Alex, and for a short while, it felt like she was trying. We had a couple of nice dates, just the two of us, and I thought maybe, just maybe, she understood how much this meant to me. But my relief was short-lived. Soon enough, Megan's old habits crept back in, and Alex was front and center once again. It started with small things. She'd be late to our dates because Alex needed to talk or had a minor crisis that couldn't wait. Then, she'd cancel our plans last minute, apologizing profusely, but always with the same excuse: Alex needed her. One Friday night, we planned a quiet evening at my place. I'd cooked dinner, set up a playlist of her favorite songs, and was genuinely excited to spend time together. Just as I finished setting up, I got a text from her. "I'm so sorry, but Alex is going through something serious. Rain check?" I sat there staring at my phone, feeling the familiar anger and disappointment creep in. I wanted to tell her how much this was hurting me, but I knew it wouldn't matter. Somehow, Alex's needs would always outweigh mine. The next day, I confronted Megan. I told her that I felt like she was constantly choosing Alex over me, that our relationship was suffering because of it. She looked at me, almost bewildered. "You're overreacting," she said. "Alex is like family to me. I can't just abandon them when they're going through something." But it didn't feel like family to me. Megan and Alex had a closeness that went beyond friendship. They had pet names for each other, Megs and Lex, and it always stung when I heard them use those names, especially when Megan had never bothered to come up with a nickname for me. There was this one weekend I'll never forget. We'd been planning a road trip together for months. I'd booked a cabin, mapped out scenic spots to visit, and was looking forward to spending quality time with Megan, away from everything. But a few days before we were supposed to leave, she casually mentioned that Alex might come along. I lost it. I told her, as calmly as I could, that this was supposed to be our trip, that I'd planned it for us alone. Megan looked at me, hurt and defensive. "Alex's plans fell through, and they really need this. Why can't you just be supportive?" I ended up canceling the trip. I couldn't stand the thought of another weekend spent in the background, watching Megan and Alex share moments I was supposed to have with her. When I told her I was canceling, Megan just shrugged and said, "Well, maybe next time." I watched her walk out the door without a second thought. The worst part was the late-night calls. Every night, like clockwork, Megan would get a text or a call from Alex, and she'd drop whatever she was doing to talk to them. Sometimes, she'd stay on the phone with Alex for hours, even when we were supposed to be spending time together. One night, I asked her why they had to talk so late. She said, "Alex just needs someone to talk to before bed. It helps them relax." I tried to explain how uncomfortable this made me, how it felt like I was constantly competing for her attention. Megan just sighed, clearly irritated. "Why can't you just understand? Alex and I have been best friends for years. I thought you'd be supportive of that." Things took an even uglier turn when Alex started getting more vocal about their dislike of me. Megan had mentioned that Alex thought I was too clingy and possessive, but I didn't realize just how far they'd take it. One evening, after a particularly tense day, Alex called me out directly. They sent me a message bluntly stating, "I don't like the way you try to control Megan. She's not your property. Maybe if you weren't so toxic, she'd actually want to spend more time with you." I was stunned. I hadn't even realized Alex had my number. The accusations hit me hard. Toxic? Controlling? I was just trying to have a normal relationship with Megan, but it seemed impossible with Alex constantly in the picture. I wanted to show Megan the message, to let her know what Alex was saying about me, but I knew it wouldn't help. She'd take Alex's side, as always. Another shock came a week later. Megan and I had been planning to attend my friend's wedding together. I was excited to introduce her to my friends, to show her off as my girlfriend. But the night before, she called to say she couldn't make it. Alex had a family emergency and needed her support. I was livid. I told her that this was an important event for me, that I'd wanted her by my side. She just sighed and said, "You know I'd be there if I could, but Alex needs me more right now. You're being unreasonable." The next day, I went to the wedding alone, embarrassed and angry. My friends asked where Megan was, and I had to make up some excuse about her being busy. I couldn't bring myself to admit the truth, that my girlfriend had chosen her best friend over me, yet again. When I got home that night, I decided I couldn't keep quiet any longer. I told Megan everything, how it felt like she was prioritizing Alex over our relationship, how her constant need to be there for them was hurting me. But instead of listening, she got defensive. "Alex is my best friend," she snapped. "They've always been there for me. I'm not going to abandon them just because you're insecure." "Insecure?" I echoed, stunned. "Megan, I'm asking for basic respect. I want to feel like I matter to you." She just shook her head. "You're being dramatic. Alex has always been there for me, and if you can't handle that, maybe you're not as understanding as I thought." The final straw came a few nights later. Megan and I had made plans to spend the weekend together. We'd agreed, no interruptions, just the two of us. I was cautiously optimistic, hoping this would be the time she'd actually follow through on her promise to put us first. But on Saturday morning, just as we were getting ready to head out for breakfast, Megan's phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen, and her face lit up. It was a message from Alex, saying they'd had a rough night and wanted to hang out. Without even asking me, Megan replied, "Be right there," and started grabbing her things. I just stood there, dumbfounded. She looked at me, as if she'd only just remembered I was there, and said, "Alex needs me. I'll be back soon, okay?" That was it. I couldn't take it anymore. I told her, right then and there, that I couldn't be in a relationship where I always came second. She looked at me, genuinely surprised, as if she hadn't realized the effect this was having on me. "You're really going to make me choose between you and Alex?" she asked, her tone incredulous. "I'm not making you choose," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. "But I can't keep doing this. I deserve someone who actually values our relationship." For the first time, Megan seemed to grasp what I was saying. She promised me she'd set boundaries, that she'd make an effort to show me I was important to her. But her words felt hollow. I'd heard it all before, and nothing had changed. That night, I went home alone, wondering if I'd made the right decision. Part of me still loved Megan, but the other part knew that love wasn't enough if she couldn't respect my feelings. I'd spent months competing with Alex, trying to prove that I was worthy of Megan's time and attention. But no matter what I did, it was never enough. I don't know what's going to happen next. Maybe Megan will finally see the impact this is having on us, or maybe I'll have to walk away for good. Either way, I can't keep living in the shadow of her friendship with Alex. I need a partner, not someone who sees me as an afterthought. After months of being sidelined, I was done. It wasn't that I wanted to control Megan's friendships, but I couldn't ignore how much this was tearing me apart. I realized that if things were ever going to change, I had to make it clear just how serious this was. So, one evening, I finally did it. I gave Megan an ultimatum. We were at her place, sitting on her worn but cozy couch, surrounded by the soft glow of the candles she liked to light every evening. I took a deep breath, gathering my thoughts before looking her in the eyes. Megan, I need you to hear me out. I've tried to be patient, to support your friendship with Alex, but it's reached a point where I feel like I'm just here in the background. I can't keep doing this unless something changes. She looked at me, confused, almost offended, like I was accusing her of something out of the blue. What are you saying? She asked, her tone defensive. I'm saying that if you can't set boundaries with Alex, I don't see a future for us. I can't keep feeling like I'm a guest in my own relationship. Either we make this a partnership, or I'm out. Megan's eyes widened in disbelief. Are you seriously asking me to choose between you and my best friend? She said, her voice rising. I could see the hurt and anger building up in her expression, but I held my ground. It's not about choosing, Megan. It's about respect. I'm asking you to respect our relationship enough to make it a priority. If that means putting some distance between you and Alex, then yes, I am asking for that. She shook her head, crossing her arms defensively. Alex has been there for me long before you came into the picture. You're acting like a jealous, controlling boyfriend, and I don't recognize you anymore. My frustration hit its breaking point. Maybe if you actually recognized how your actions were affecting me, you'd understand why I'm so hurt. But I can't make you see that, can I? The room fell silent. I could see the wheels turning in her head as she struggled to process what I'd said. Finally, she looked away, her expression softening. Maybe you're right, she whispered, almost to herself. Maybe I haven't been fair to you. I don't know what to do. For the next few days, I kept my distance. I needed her to have the space to truly understand what this ultimatum meant, and I needed time to think about whether this relationship was worth salvaging if things didn't change. It was one of the hardest things I'd ever done, holding back from calling her, from reaching out, but I knew it was necessary. During this time, I found myself analyzing everything about our relationship. I thought back to all the moments Megan had chosen Alex over me, all the nights I'd spent alone because she decided to be there for her friend instead. I realized that this wasn't just about Alex. It was about me feeling neglected, unimportant, and disrespected. And if Megan couldn't see that, I wasn't sure how we could move forward. A few days later, Megan reached out, asking if we could meet. I could tell by her voice that something had shifted. She sounded nervous, maybe even a little unsure, which was unlike her usual confident self. We agreed to meet at a quiet cafe, a place we used to go when we first started dating. As soon as I walked in, I noticed her sitting by the window, stirring her coffee absent-mindedly. She looked up when I approached, giving me a tentative smile. I sat down across from her, and for a moment, neither of us spoke. Finally, she broke the silence. I've been thinking a lot about what you said, and I realized I haven't been fair to you. I didn't mean to make you feel like you're less important than Alex. It's just that they've been such a huge part of my life. I didn't know how to balance that with being with you. I could see she was struggling to be open, and as much as I appreciated it, part of me was still skeptical. Megan, it's not just about balance. It's about making our relationship a priority. I need to feel like I matter to you, and right now, it doesn't feel that way. She nodded, biting her lip nervously. I know. I'm sorry. I was so used to Alex being my go-to for everything that I didn't realize how much it was hurting you. Her words were genuine, but I couldn't help but wonder if she was just saying what I wanted to hear. What does this mean, then? I asked. Are you actually willing to set some boundaries with Alex? She hesitated, her gaze dropping to her coffee. I don't know how to explain this to Alex without hurting them, but I'm willing to try. You're important to me, and I don't want to lose you over this. For the first time in what felt like forever, I felt a small spark of hope. Maybe things could change. But even as she promised to work on things, I knew that words alone wouldn't be enough. I needed to see actual changes, real proof that I was more than just an afterthought. Over the next few weeks, Megan started making an effort to spend more time with me, one-on-one, without Alex constantly in the background. It was a start, and I appreciated it, but I couldn't shake the feeling that she was still hesitant to truly set boundaries. I noticed her checking her phone frequently, obviously expecting a message from Alex, and sometimes she'd slip away to make a quick call or reply to a text. One night, we were out having dinner, and I caught her glancing at her phone again. I couldn't keep it in anymore. "Are you really here with me, or are you still halfway with Alex?" I asked, trying to keep my tone calm but failing. She looked up, clearly startled. "I'm here with you. I promise." "Then why are you constantly checking your phone? I thought we agreed to focus on us tonight," she sighed, putting her phone face down on the table. "You're right. I'm sorry. It's just, Alex has been going through a rough time lately, and I feel guilty for not being there." I took a deep breath, trying to choose my words carefully. "I get it, Megan. I understand that Alex is important to you, but I need to be important to you, too. I need to know that when we're together, I have your full attention." She nodded slowly, as if truly grasping the weight of my words. "I'll try. I'll really try this time." Over the following weeks, things began to shift. Megan seemed more committed, genuinely making an effort to prioritize our time together without interruptions. It was a relief, and for the first time in a while, I felt hopeful about our future. Then came the final test. One evening, while we were at my place watching a movie, her phone rang. She glanced at the screen, and I could see it was Alex calling. Megan looked at me, hesitation written all over her face. In that moment, I felt a surge of anxiety, wondering if she'd answer or let it go to voicemail. After a long pause, she hit the ignore button and set her phone down. "I'm with you right now," she said softly, giving me a small smile. It was a simple gesture, but it meant the world to me. For the first time, I felt like I was truly her priority, that she was willing to put our relationship first. Maybe we still had a long way to go, but in that moment, I felt like we were finally on the right path. After weeks of tension, arguments, and uncertainty, I finally felt like we'd reached a breakthrough. Megan seemed to be making an effort, showing me that I actually mattered to her. But nothing could have prepared me for what happened next. One Friday night, Megan called and said she had something important to tell me. Her voice sounded different, a mix of nerves and determination. She asked if she could come over, and of course, I agreed. I spent the next hour pacing around, wondering what she had on her mind. When she arrived, she looked more serious than usual. She didn't wait long to get to the point. "I canceled my plans with Alex this weekend," she said. "I told them I was going to spend it with you instead." I was stunned, trying to process what she just said. Megan looked at me, searching for some kind of reaction. "I realized I've been unfair to you," she continued, her voice barely above a whisper. "I've been so focused on Alex and their needs that I ignored yours. I'm sorry." I could feel my heart racing. I'd been waiting to hear these words for so long, but part of me had started to doubt it would ever happen. "Thank you," I managed to say, trying to keep my voice steady. "That means a lot to me, Megan." She nodded, looking relieved. "I know it's just a weekend, but I want you to know that I'm serious about this. I want to make this work. I want you to feel like you're the most important person in my life." The weekend felt like a new beginning. We planned to stay in, cook together, watch movies, and just enjoy each other's company without the usual distractions. Megan seemed different, more present, more attentive. It felt like she was finally committed to us, and I started to believe that maybe we had a real future together. As we were cooking dinner that night, Megan brought up something I hadn't expected. "I've been thinking a lot about our future," she said, glancing at me as she chopped vegetables. "About what we want, where we see ourselves in a few years." I tried to play it cool, but inside, I was thrilled. "Yeah? What are you thinking?" She paused, looking thoughtful. "I don't know, exactly, but I want to build a life with someone who's truly there for me. And I want to be that person for you, too." We talked for hours that night, about everything from our dreams and goals to the kind of life we wanted to build together. For the first time, it felt like we were on the same page, like we were finally building something real. The next day, Megan suggested going for a long drive, just the two of us. She knew I loved exploring new places, and it felt like her way of showing that she was ready to focus on our relationship, to put us first. We ended up driving out to a scenic spot I'd wanted to visit for a while, a place I'd mentioned to her months ago. I was surprised she even remembered. As we sat there, looking out over the view, Megan turned to me with a serious expression. "I want to make this work, really, but I need you to trust me. I know it won't be easy to rebuild that trust, but I'm willing to try." I nodded, feeling a mix of hope and caution. "I want that too, Megan. I'm willing to move forward, but we have to be honest with each other. No more pushing things aside." She agreed, and for the first time, it felt like we were truly on the same page. We spent the rest of the day talking, laughing, and enjoying each other's company. It felt like we were finally a real couple, free from the tension and resentment that had built up over the past few months. That night, as we lay in bed, Megan brought up something that caught me off guard. "I know this might sound weird, but I talked to Alex about everything," she admitted, looking a bit embarrassed. I wasn't sure how to react. Part of me felt relieved, but another part was nervous about what Alex might have said. "What did they say?" I asked, trying to keep my tone casual. Megan sighed. "They weren't happy. They said I was changing and accused me of letting you control me. But I told them this was my decision, that it had nothing to do with you." I felt a surge of relief and gratitude. Megan was finally standing up for our relationship, despite Alex's disapproval. "Thank you for doing that," I said quietly. "I know it couldn't have been easy." She gave me a small smile. "I know it's not going to be perfect, but I'm willing to try if you are." As the weekend came to an end, I felt a renewed sense of hope. Megan was making an effort, and for the first time, I believed that our relationship had a real chance. We talked about our future, about where we wanted to be in a few years, and it felt like we were truly building something together. But a part of me knew that this was just the beginning. There would still be challenges ahead, and we'd both have to work hard to make this relationship work. But as I looked at Megan, I felt a sense of peace I hadn't felt in months. Maybe, just maybe, we could make this work. The weekend had been everything I'd hoped for. Megan and I had finally reached a place where I felt like we were truly moving forward, and for the first time in months, I felt a sense of peace. I was looking forward to what the future held, confident that we were building a real foundation together. But just as we were wrapping up the weekend, Megan dropped a bombshell that I never saw coming. It was Sunday evening, and we were sitting on the couch, enjoying the last few hours of our time together before we both had to return to the chaos of the workweek. She'd been unusually quiet, her expression thoughtful, almost anxious. I figured she was just tired from our busy weekend, but then she turned to me with a look in her eyes I'd never seen before. "I need to tell you something," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. My heart skipped a beat, sensing the weight of her words. "Okay," I said slowly, my mind racing through possibilities. "What's going on?" She took a deep breath, her gaze dropping to her hands. I'm pregnant." I felt my entire world tilt. Pregnant? The word echoed in my head, swirling around as I tried to process what she just said. I wasn't sure what I was supposed to feel: joy, fear, confusion, maybe all of the above. We hadn't even talked about kids, and here we were, suddenly faced with a reality neither of us had anticipated. How long have you known?" I managed to ask, my voice barely steady. "Just a few days," she admitted. "I wasn't sure how to tell you. I wanted this weekend to be perfect, and I didn't want to drop this on you until I knew we were in a good place." I nodded, still reeling from the news. Part of me felt an overwhelming rush of emotions, excitement, even happiness. The idea of becoming a father was terrifying, but it was also strangely thrilling. But alongside that excitement was a nagging sense of unease that I couldn't shake. We'd been going through so much lately, struggling just to make our relationship work. And now, out of nowhere, we were about to bring a child into the picture. It felt like everything was happening too fast, like we were racing toward a future we weren't ready for. But there was something else, something deeper that I didn't want to acknowledge. A tiny voice in the back of my mind whispered questions I didn't want to ask. Was this really my child? I hated myself for even thinking it, but the doubts lingered. After all, Megan had been spending so much time with Alex, practically living a second life that I'd barely been a part of. And with all the tension and uncertainty we'd been through, it was hard not to wonder if there was more to this story. Megan, are you sure? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. I mean, are you sure you're pregnant? She nodded, her expression a mix of excitement and anxiety. I took 2 tests. Both were positive. I'm going to see a doctor next week to confirm. But, yeah, I'm pretty sure. I nodded, trying to wrap my head around it. I don't know what to think. This is all so sudden. I know, she said softly. It's a lot to take in. But I'm ready for this if you are. I want us to do this together. Her words softened the knot in my stomach, and for a moment, I let myself imagine a future with Megan and our child. Maybe this was exactly what we needed. A fresh start, a chance to build something real and lasting. But even as I tried to focus on that vision, the doubts lingered, gnawing at me from the inside. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept turning the idea over in my mind, wondering how this would change our lives. And no matter how much I wanted to believe that this was a sign of our future together, I couldn't ignore the shadow of doubt that hung over me. The next day, I tried to push my suspicions aside. Megan seemed genuinely happy, already talking about doctor's appointments and looking up baby names. She was excited, her eyes bright with anticipation, and I wanted to share in that joy. But every time I looked at her, I felt the weight of unspoken questions pressing down on me. Over the next few days, I wrestled with my conflicting emotions. I wanted to be supportive, to be there for Megan and our child. But the doubts continued to fester. I kept thinking about Alex, about all the times Megan had chosen them over me, about the closeness they shared that I could never fully understand. I hated myself for it, but I couldn't help wondering if Alex had a part in this. I finally confided in my best friend, Jake, hoping he could give me some perspective. Jake and I had known each other for years, and he'd been there through all the ups and downs with Megan. "Dude, that's intense," Jake said, running a hand through his hair. "I don't know what to tell you. Are you sure you want to keep this to yourself?" I shrugged, feeling torn. I don't want to accuse her of anything. What if I'm wrong? What if this is exactly what it seems, just us having a baby? Jake gave me a sympathetic look. "You're not accusing her, man. But if you've got doubts, maybe it's better to get some clarity now instead of waiting until it's too late." His words hit me hard, and I knew he was right. I couldn't keep this to myself forever. If I wanted any peace of mind, I'd have to be honest with Megan, no matter how much it might hurt. That evening, as we were sitting down for dinner, I gathered my courage and decided to bring it up. My heart was pounding, and I could feel the weight of my own words before I even spoke. "Megan, there's something I need to ask you," I said, my voice hesitant. She looked up, her expression curious but slightly tense. "Sure. What is it?" she asked. I took a deep breath, feeling the tension in the air. I just need to know. Is there any chance that this baby might not be mine?" Her face went pale, and for a moment, I thought she was going to burst into tears. She looked at me, hurt and angry, her eyes filling with a mixture of shock and disbelief. "How could you ask me that?" she whispered, her voice trembling. "After everything we've been through, how could you even think that?" I felt a pang of guilt, but I forced myself to hold my ground. "Megan, you've spent so much time with Alex. I don't know what goes on when I'm not around. I'm not saying you did anything, but I just need to be sure." She shook her head, her eyes blazing with anger. "Alex is my best friend. That's all they are. I can't believe you'd accuse me of cheating." I felt my own frustration bubbling up. "I'm not accusing you, Megan. I just need some reassurance. This is a huge deal for both of us, and I need to know that we're starting this on solid ground." For a long moment, we sat there in silence, the tension thick and suffocating. Finally, Megan took a deep breath, her expression softening. "I get it. I understand why you're worried. But I promise you, this is our baby. I wouldn't lie to you about something like this." Her words eased the knot in my chest, and for the first time, I felt a glimmer of hope. Maybe this really was the fresh start we'd been waiting for. I wanted to believe her, to trust that we could move forward without any more doubts or suspicions. In the days that followed, I tried to focus on the future, on the life we were building together. Megan threw herself into planning for the baby, and I did my best to support her, to be the partner she needed. But every now and then, the doubts would resurface, and I'd find myself wondering if we were really as solid as we seemed. Then, one evening, Megan came home looking upset. She sat down beside me, her expression tense. "I need to tell you something," she said quietly. My heart sank, bracing myself for whatever was coming. "What is it?" "I saw Alex today," she admitted. "They're not taking this well. They think I'm changing, that I'm losing myself in this relationship." I felt a surge of anger, but I kept my voice steady. "Megan, we're about to have a child. Your priorities have to change. Alex needs to understand that." She nodded, looking conflicted. "I know, but they've been my best friend for so long. It's hard to just turn away from that." "I'm not asking you to turn away," I said, trying to keep my frustration in check. "But this is our life now. We have to focus on us, on this family we're creating." She looked at me, her eyes filled with uncertainty. "I just wish things could be simpler. I want to make this work, but I don't know if Alex will ever truly accept this." In that moment, I realized that no matter what we did, Alex would always be a part of our lives. But as I looked at Megan, I knew that I was willing to take that risk. Whatever challenges lay ahead, I was ready to face them for her, for us, and for the future we were building together. After Megan told me about the pregnancy, I thought things were finally starting to settle down. Despite the lingering doubts, I was willing to push forward and make this work. I even started to feel excited about the idea of becoming a father, imagining a future where we could put the past behind us and focus on building a life together. But then everything came crashing down. One night, I was at her place, and Megan had left her phone on the counter while she stepped out to pick up some groceries. I knew I shouldn't, but a nagging feeling led me to glance at her messages. I told myself it was just to ease my doubts, to put my mind at rest once and for all. But as I scrolled through her conversations, I found exactly the opposite. There, in her messages with Alex, I saw texts that made my stomach drop. Megan had texted Alex about the pregnancy before she told me, a conversation that unraveled the truth about everything. In the messages, Megan told Alex about the pregnancy, saying she wasn't sure how I'd react but was hopeful that it would bring us closer together. But the more I read, the darker it got. Alex responded, clearly annoyed, saying that he didn't want to be involved and that he had no interest in being a father. Megan tried to calm him down, telling him it wouldn't affect their friendship, but Alex wasn't having it. His last message was brutal and definitive. "If you keep this baby and try to pull me into it, I'm done with you." And then I saw it. Alex had blocked her. I sat there in shock, reading the messages over and over, my heart pounding as I tried to comprehend what I was seeing. Megan had lied to me, used our relationship as a shield, knowing all along that there was a chance this child wasn't mine. She'd gone to Alex first, and only when he turned her away did she come to me, acting as if everything was fine, as if she wanted to start a life with me. By the time Megan came back with the groceries, I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. She noticed immediately that something was wrong, but I couldn't even look at her. "We need to talk," I said, my voice cold and steady. She set the groceries down, looking concerned. "What's going on?" I took a deep breath, trying to keep my anger in check. "I know about the text with Alex. I know there's a chance this baby isn't mine." Her face went pale, and she took a step back, her eyes wide with shock. You read my messages?" I didn't even flinch. "After everything we've been through, I think I have the right to know the truth. You lied to me, Megan. You looked me in the eyes and made me believe that this was our future, knowing all along it might not be." She opened her mouth to respond, but no words came out. She just stood there, looking like a deer caught in headlights, guilt and shame written all over her face. "How could you do this to me?" I demanded, my voice breaking. "After everything, after all the times I put my own doubts aside to make this work, you betrayed me like this?" Tears filled her eyes, and she reached out to touch my arm, but I pulled away. "I'm sorry," she whispered, her voice trembling. "I didn't mean for any of this to happen. I was just scared and I didn't know what to do." I shook my head, unable to contain my anger. Scared? Scared enough to lie to me? To manipulate me into thinking this was our future? "Megan, I don't even know who you are anymore." She tried to explain, to make excuses, but I didn't want to hear it. My mind was spinning, my heart breaking as I realized that everything I thought we were building was based on a lie. There's only one way to fix this, I said, my voice firm. We're getting a paternity test. I need to know the truth. Megan hesitated, looking like she wanted to argue, but she knew she didn't have a choice. Okay, she whispered, barely meeting my eyes. If that's what you need, then we'll do it. The next few days were a blur of anger, hurt, and disbelief. I tried to go about my routine, but everything felt hollow. I kept thinking back to the times I defended her, stood by her, believing that our love was real, only to find out that she'd been hiding the truth from me all along. When the day of the test finally came, Megan looked exhausted, her face pale and drawn. She tried to hold my hand as we waited in the clinic, but I pulled away. I couldn't bring myself to look at her, let alone pretend that everything was fine. The test was quick, but the waiting felt like an eternity. I didn't know what answer I was hoping for. Part of me wanted it to be mine, to salvage something from this nightmare. But another part of me knew that if the child wasn't mine, I'd have the closure I needed to walk away and never look back. A few days later, the results arrived. I met Megan at her place, both of us tense and silent as we sat across from each other, the unopened envelope lying between us. She looked at me, her eyes filled with fear and regret. "Whatever happens, I'm sorry," she whispered, her voice barely audible. I didn't respond. I just picked up the envelope, took a deep breath, and opened it. The words stared back at me, clear and definitive, not a match. In that moment, I felt everything crumble around me. The last shred of hope, the final thread holding our relationship together, was gone. I looked at Megan, my face expressionless, and handed her the paper. "It's not mine," I said quietly, the words hollow and cold. She broke down, tears streaming down her face as she tried to explain, to apologize, to make excuses for her betrayal. But I didn't want to hear it. I felt numb, empty, like the person I'd loved was a stranger who had been lying to me from the start. "Megan, I can't do this anymore," I said, standing up and heading for the door. "You destroyed any trust we had. There's nothing left for us." She begged me to stay, to give her another chance, but I knew it was over. There was no coming back from this. I'd spent months fighting for our relationship, bending over backward to make things work, only to realize that I'd been fighting for a lie. As I walked out the door, I felt a strange sense of relief. It hurt, knowing that everything I'd believed in was gone, but I also knew that I was free. Free from the lies, the manipulation, and the constant feeling of being second best. I said goodbye to Megan that day, for good. She tried calling, texting, leaving voicemails, but I ignored them all. I knew that I deserved better, that I couldn't keep holding on to someone who had betrayed me so deeply. It wasn't easy. The days that followed were filled with heartbreak and anger, but I knew I'd made the right choice. Megan had crossed a line that couldn't be undone, and I couldn't keep pretending that everything was okay. In the end, I realized that sometimes love isn't enough. Sometimes the person you think you know is hiding behind lies, and no amount of forgiveness can make things right. I walked away that day, and I never looked back.